Hi everyone, I'm Wendy, and today I have a whole food plant-based Aldi grocery haul and meal prep for you. So I'll show you everything that I bought at Aldi today and then how I'm going to be using it for meal prep throughout the week. Let's jump right in and see what I got. Of course, I got a couple bunches of bananas, which I freeze for smoothies. Then also for smoothies, I have 2 containers of mixed greens and 2 containers of this baby spinach and arugula. I also got 2 bags of chopped kale. These do have some big chunky pieces of stems, but I don't mind since I'm using it in smoothies. Next, I got some pears, 2 bags of coleslaw mix, a beautiful bunch of broccoli, mandarin oranges. I also have some parsley and cilantro, bell peppers, garlic, cherry tomatoes, and avocados. And I got these jalapenos. They were giant. And a bag of limes. Then I have a ton of potatoes. I love potatoes. I got a bag of Yukon Gold and a couple bags of sweet potatoes. I also got 2 bags of onions, which is probably more than I need, but they'll keep for a while. Then I got some salsa, and it has pretty clean ingredients. The worst is it has so much sodium. I generally try to find the lowest sodium salsas I can get, so normally I probably wouldn't have bought this. But it was all I could get at Aldi. I also prefer to avoid natural flavor because that could really be anything, but otherwise it doesn't have added sugar or oil, which is great. Thankfully, tomato paste usually doesn't have salt added, so I got a couple cans of that. Next are some medjool dates, 2 blocks of tofu, frozen corn, spinach, blueberries, and pineapple. Then I've got canned black beans and garbanzo beans. I was happy to find they had some organic varieties of canned beans. So I got organic black beans, and the sodium amount wasn't too terrible on those. But the chickpeas, on the other hand, have way more sodium than I normally would get. But a plant-based diet includes much less sodium than a standard American diet, so I'm okay with using minimally processed items like canned beans with a little extra sodium every once in a while. And I'll rinse those very well to remove as much sodium as possible. Finally, I got some quinoa and brown rice. My grand total for all of these groceries was $109.01. Groceries have gotten pretty expensive, but I think that's a pretty good deal for all of these great whole food plant-based groceries. And now I'll move on to the food prep. A couple notes about this Aldi food prep. For the most part, I'm only using what I bought today at Aldi. However, I will be using some ingredients from my pantry that I consider to be staples, such as the spices and condiments that I'll use, but most all of the spices and condiments that I'm using can be found at Aldi. By the way, I will have a blog post linked below the video with all of the recipes I show you today. First, I'll start by getting organized and washing some produce. I lay out all of my fresh fruits on the counter so I can easily use them throughout the week. Then I'll move on to washing my potatoes. These sweet potatoes were pretty dirty, so I filled a bowl with water to let them soak, then I will scrub and rinse them before laying them out on a baking sheet. I'll bake them at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about an hour, flipping them halfway through. Next, I'm rinsing my cherry tomatoes and setting them aside. Then I'll wash and peel my yellow potatoes. I cut them in halves or quarters and put them in my 6-quart Instant Pot with a cup of water. I set this to 17 minutes at high pressure, and then I'll let those natural release. If you don't have an Instant Pot, you could steam these on the stovetop. Next, I'm rinsing 1 cup of quinoa, and I'll add that to my 3-quart Instant Pot with 1.5 cups of water, and I'm cooking that for 3 minutes at high pressure. I'll also let that natural release. Again, this could easily be cooked on the stovetop if you don't have a pressure cooker. Then I'll start prepping more ingredients for my recipes. The key to batch cooking is finding ways to work on multiple things simultaneously. So everything I've started so far has to cook for a while, which now gives me plenty of time to prepare everything else. So next, I'm washing the bell peppers. These were actually quite dirty, so I'm scrubbing them with a brush before rinsing them with water. Then I'm slicing those up along with one of the jalapenos for a rice and beans casserole. If you don't like the heat, you can leave the jalapenos out, but I find that the heat level of jalapenos can vary considerably. These that I got were not really spicy at all. You can always taste test a little tiny sliver of any kind of hot pepper before you throw it in a dish to make sure you get the heat level where you want it. I'm also chopping up a purple onion and several cloves of garlic. Once my veggies are all chopped, it's time to throw the casserole together. I'm rinsing 1.5 cups of quick cooking brown rice and throwing that in a 9 by 13 inch casserole dish. Then I'm draining and rinsing my 2 cans of black beans. Like I mentioned, Aldi doesn't have low sodium or no salt added beans, so I'm rinsing these well to get as much sodium off as I can. Then I'll add that to the casserole dish along with all of those beautiful veggies. I'll go ahead and mix everything up now, and then I'll prepare the liquid and spices. I'm mixing 1 entire can of tomato paste with 1.5 cups of water. I'm just doing this to make sure the tomato paste gets fully incorporated throughout the casserole. Then I'm adding cumin, chili powder, and oregano. I'll pour that into the casserole dish, and I'm adding another 2 cups of water and carefully stirring to combine everything. I'll cover that with foil and get ready to bake. By this point, my sweet potatoes were done baking, so I took those out to cool. Once they've cooled, I'll stand them up in a container to store in the fridge for the week. I'm dropping the oven temperature down to 375, but before I put the rice and beans casserole in the oven, I realized I forgot to add my frozen corn. I had intended to use that, so I went ahead and added it now and carefully stirred the casserole one more time. This will go in the oven for about an hour to an hour and a half total, and I'll stop and stir it once or twice during cooking. While that starts baking, I'll move on to prepping my next meal. My quinoa is done cooking now, so I'm moving on to my spinach, quinoa, tofu breakfast bites. It's kind of like a baked frittata. To a mixing bowl, I'm adding red onion, garlic, chopped tomatoes, half a bag of frozen spinach, 2 cups of the cooked quinoa, and my spices. This is granulated garlic and onion, parsley, dill, turmeric, and black pepper. If you like, you could also add salt or your favorite salt substitute to taste. Next, I'm adding a tablespoon of nutritional yeast and a tablespoon of stone ground mustard. Like I said, I'm mostly using all ingredients that can be found at Aldi. They do have a stone ground mustard, but I prefer to get this no salt added mustard. And nutritional yeast might be harder to find at Aldi, but I do believe they sometimes have it. But in any case, this is something that I always keep on hand. I'll stir to combine and then get the tofu ready. I'm adding 2 blocks of tofu and a cup of water to my Vitamix. I'm not pressing the tofu, but I did drain off the excess liquid, and I'm using fresh water to blend. This becomes really creamy and smooth, and I'll add that to my mixing bowl, stir it to combine, and then it's ready to bake. I'm using a muffin tray to make it really convenient at breakfast time. But this recipe is enough for 2 trays, and I only have 1 muffin pan, so I'm putting the rest in a 9x9 pan. Before baking this, I'll check on my rice and bean casserole and stir that up. I also decided to add an extra cup of water because the rice wasn't quite cooked all the way. So I'll put that back in the oven, and I'll add the eggless frittata and bake for about 30 to 45 minutes. Then I'll make my cheesy sauce using some of those potatoes I cooked earlier in the Instant Pot. But first, a snack for the chef. Meal prepping like this can be a little intense at times, so it's good to take breaks and refuel. The cheesy sauce I'm making is the same that I used in my Rotel dip video, which I'll link for you, and I also showed the basic cheese sauce in my Party Foods video. Normally, I use a combination of white beans and sweet potatoes as the base, but today I'm just using these Yukon Gold potatoes. Then everything else is pretty much the same as my usual recipe. These yellow potatoes are so starchy though that I needed a little extra water to blend. In the blog post below, I will have the variation on this recipe that I used today. Once that's blended up, I'll put it in a couple containers, and I can use this with my rice and bean casserole or the quinoa tofu frittatas. Speaking of, the rice and bean casserole is done, so I'll set that out to cool. If you wanted to, you could add the cheesy sauce on top and bake it a little longer, but I'm just going to drizzle it on my individual portions. When the eggless frittata is done, I'll set it out to cool and move on to my last main dish, sweet chili chickpeas and broccoli. I'm starting by adding the sauce ingredients to my Vitamix container. Again, all of the amounts will be in the blog post below. I have water and rice vinegar, then I'm adding dates. If you're using a standard blender, you'll want to let the dates soak. Even with a Vitamix, I like to let the dates soak a little bit just to ensure they get fully blended. Then I'm adding garlic powder and a low sodium tamari. The last ingredient for the sauce is red pepper flakes, but I'll wait to add those until after everything else is blended so you can still see the flakes in the final sauce. I'm setting the blender aside so the dates can soak while I prepare the rest of the ingredients. I'm washing the broccoli, and I'm just using the florets for this recipe, but save the stems. You can either make vegetable broth or chop them and sauté them. Then I'm rinsing my chickpeas, once again rinsing them really well to get some salt off. I'm adding both the broccoli and the chickpeas to a pot with a little bit of water, putting the lid on and letting them steam for about 5 minutes. Once those are just about done, I'll blend the sauce and then add the red pepper flakes. If you're sensitive to the heat, you can add just a tiny pinch. I'm adding about 1/2 teaspoon, but if you like the heat, you could add even more. I personally don't tolerate a lot of heat, but I like a little bit. And for me, 1/2 teaspoon is just enough for the flavor, but not too much heat. I'll pulse that just to mix them in and then pour it all over the chickpeas and broccoli. And once that's mixed up, I'll set it aside to cool and transfer it to a container to store in the fridge. Now we're heading into the home stretch, so our meal prep is almost done. Last but not least, I'm putting together just a few extra sides to go with my meals. First, I'm making a quick guacamole. I'm mashing a couple avocados. To that, I'm adding tomatoes, cilantro, and lime juice. I had intended to add some chopped red onion, but I completely forgot. I definitely recommend adding a little bit of red onion, but even without it, the guacamole was pretty tasty. And if you make guacamole ahead of time, it will oxidize and turn a little brown on top. It doesn't really affect the flavor, but it's not that pretty to look at. So I'm only making enough for the next day or two, and I can whip up another batch really quick if I want more later in the week. Finally, I'm making a quick and really simple cabbage slaw. I put 1 bag of the cabbage in a container, and then I'm adding red onion, lime juice, and a little bit of mustard. I'll put the lid on and give it a good shake to mix everything together. This simple cabbage is a great addition to brighten up the flavor of my rice and bean casserole. And that's it, my meal prep is done. It ended up taking me about 3.5 hours to finish. When you're meal prepping this way, you do need to dedicate a pretty large chunk of time once a week to get everything done. But I probably could have gotten it done in about 2 hours if I wasn't recording. I'm a one-woman show, so without a cameraman, I had to stop every couple minutes to get all of the shots. So in 3.5 hours, that time included everything from recording, washing my produce, making the recipes, and I even got all my dishes done. So now I'll just quickly show you how I put these meals together throughout the week. For breakfast, I'll have the eggless frittatas with some of those extra potatoes. You can eat them plain or load it up with cheesy sauce, salsa, and fresh herbs. I also still have the kale and other greens along with my frozen fruit for smoothies. So every day I'll blend some greens with fruit and water and have that alongside my potatoes and frittata. For lunch, I have the rice and bean casserole. I serve this with some of the cheesy sauce, guacamole, salsa, fresh herbs, and cabbage slaw. Dinner will be the baked sweet potatoes with the sweet chili chickpeas and broccoli. Of course, you could mix and match some of these. If you wanted the Yukon potatoes with this instead, go for it. Or you could take leftovers of the rice and bean casserole and put it on top of a sweet potato. Mix and match as you like. Of course, everyone's appetites are different, but this meal prep should last 1 or 2 people about 4 to 5 days. Plus, there's still extra quinoa and rice and plenty of leftover peppers, tomatoes, cabbage, and greens. You can use these to snack on or make another quick meal. I ended up sauteing the leftover broccoli stems with onions and garlic. Then I added some peppers and tomatoes and simply seasoned it with some more tamari and rice vinegar. I added the leftover cooked quinoa and some fresh herbs. Then I've also got all of that fresh fruit. I'll eat these as snacks or mix them together for a quick fruit salad dessert. And with the bananas, I buy them a week in advance. I let my bananas sit and ripen and then I freeze them to use in smoothies for the next week. As you can see, it's really easy to follow your whole food plant-based diet when shopping at Aldi. With a little planning and preparation and some dedicated time each week, you can have meals ready all week long. If you got some great ideas for your next meal prep, hit the thumbs up. And as always, I love hearing from you, so leave your questions and comments below. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.